What's up, guys? Welcome back to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Nvidia, ticker symbol NVDA, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Thursday, February 8th. Nvidia stock today hitting another new all-time high, spending some time, a few minutes here, above $700 a share in regular trading hours, which was a massive milestone. The stock closed above $700 a share for the first time here, closing at $799, and we're seeing here after hours the stock's up above $705, testing nearly $710 in the after hours. Now look, as great as that is, I will always say, when the volume is low, which of course it is almost every day unless you have some massive earnings event or something, you have to take after hours with a grain of salt, even if it supports or confirms your bias. Whether it confirms or goes against your current sentiment, you have to take after hours movement with a grain of salt. The volume is just so low. It's a very small sample size. However, if I'm a bull, I'd rather see the stock up 5 points than down 5 points in the after hours, right? Now, let's take a quick zoom in here on the 1 minute chart. I just want to show you this to you guys. You can see here that we had somewhat of a setup forming on Nvidia. I was watching this very closely. Had this one popped up and rejected hard again off of that 2 standard deviation volume weighted average price band, again, self-fulfilling prophecy, kind of a subconscious indicator as the stock pulls away from the incredibly common volume-weighted average price. Everybody uses the volume-weighted average price intraday, which is why, and the only reason I use it, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Had this gotten up and rejected hard, this certainly would have been alerted and would have been a trade I would have taken on the next test. However, we never saw it exactly play out, and I'm only after intraday scalps that have provable edge over a large sample size. If you guys want to get those scalp setup alerts, my personal scalp setup alerts every single trading day, you can look to join our Roensch Capital Gold server. That link is in the pinned comment. Get grandfathered in, and I'll see you inside. Being though that today was such a massive day, we have to look at the 5 minute and look at volume. You guys know how it is here. We have to look at volume on the 5 minute and get an idea of what the biggest sample size sentiment is here. Okay, again, why are we looking at this at all, right? Well, if I'm bullish on a stock, let's say it's moving big to the upside, would I prefer that it does so on tiny little volume or huge, massive volume? Well, I think clearly the massive volume, right? Why? Because it's a bigger sample size of institutions, funds, and people agreeing with me that the stock belongs higher. And by the way, willing to pay more than I have paid in the past. I always want that pool to be as big as possible. So whatever your bias is, you want moves in that direction on any time frame to be on as much volume as possible. And then the opposite is true for moves against your bias. You want that volume to tank off. So we see here, for you bulls, we saw, really an upside move the majority of the day. This was the most aggressive upside move, I would argue. Okay, kind of between that, well, you could argue like from 10 minutes off the open up until about 30 minutes later, okay? Maybe 40 minutes later there, and you look here. The volume on the first candle is always going to be, usually, it's going to be huge. Okay, that candle happened to be red. The next candle was also red. Now, we saw this big bounce for 3 consecutive 5 minute candles, and we saw volume increasing. All right. And then it was kind of a slow grind to the upside the rest of the day up until like mid-afternoon, right here, approximately. There's nothing definitive that I can pull out of this volume and say, yep, this looks any particular way. There just isn't. But where that changes is right here. Okay. That's about 2:40 p.m. Eastern time. Just as we headed into what a lot of people would call power hour. Historically, power hour was really only the last hour of the last trading day of the week. In recent time, that has become the last hour of basically any trading day. And you can see here, right as that upside momentum occurs, right as Nvidia crosses 695 and heads up towards $700 a share, look at what volume does. It increases. I mean, listen, there's no way around it. If you're a bear, you have to look at that and say, yeah, that's there. Okay, that's what the data says. It's there. And if you're a bull, you have to look at that and say, okay, you know, that's what the institutions, the funds, the retail investors, everyone, that's what they're saying. All right, they're willing to pay higher when the stock's moving higher. Of course, you know, it's just one factor of many, but that is what you'd prefer to see if you're a bull. All right, now let's take a look at the 30-minute and get an idea day to day here, more self-fulfilling prophecy levels to keep an eye on. The most immediately relevant one here on the 30-minute specifically is going to be that 50 period. Currently, it's sitting down around 686. Understand, you know, that's going to be a little bit of a move away. We're sitting at approximately, that's a 2.7% move to the downside to make a test of that. But hey, listen, you know, if we end up seeing a test of that, if you're a bull, you're going to want to see that hold as a support level. If you're a bear, you're going to need to see that break and open up a potential move down to that 200 period, that gray line. But ideally, you know, what I'm thinking here from a bullish perspective, just get that 50 period up above $700 a share as soon as possible. Get some feet up under this move, right? You know, we've been talking about that a lot because we've had a lot of stocks here that we've been covering just absolutely skyrocketing. And we have to get some feet under the move. Listen, it's great that they're going upside, but that leaves us with another problem. A lot of traders will then perceive that the stock is kind of trading on thin air. There's not enough psychological levels or barriers or potential safety nets up underneath the name. So how can we fix that? Well, we can start by getting the quickest reacting, which is the 50 period on the 30-minute, at least starting with the 30-minute. You know, when you're looking at the 30-minute, 4-hour, and daily, the 50 period on the 30-minute is going to be the quickest to react. And getting that thing upside ideally above $700 a share as soon as possible. Okay, now let's take a look at the 4-hour chart. This is one's even going to be taking its time even more. That 50 period is currently around 643. So, I mean, listen, on the 4-hour, that's even more of a move away here. You look, and that's sitting approximately 8.7% downside move to a test of that. On the 4-hour, guys, I'm not going to sit here and make something up that I have to watch. All I'm watching on the 4-hour right now is I want that 50 period upside as soon as we possibly can. You know, that's fine. Let's move on to the daily. Okay, the daily is arguably the most important by far. We look here at the daily. What becomes very obvious immediately? I mean, $700 a share is an area to watch. It's the area to watch. It's the obvious area to watch that everybody's paying attention to. And it's going to be, you know, this is an easy video here. Because if you're a bull, what do you want to see? Because to be honest with you, all I care about is holding $700 a share. We talked about the same thing on the Roensch Capital show here tonight on the primary channel, Roensch Capital. You know, Nvidia got a price target increase here today as we head into earnings in a couple of weeks. But right now, $700 a share is the area to watch. If you're a bull, you just want that to hold. Listen, I don't care if this thing trades sideways for the next week. I don't care if it trades sideways tomorrow. Fine. It has been on such a tear that it is time, now that we have broken and held $700 a share for one trading day, if we trade sideways and just hold 700 for the next 3 weeks, listen, that's a huge accomplishment still, okay? Obviously, you'd prefer that it holds 700, retests it, claims it as a support level, everyone agrees on big volume, and it rips up out of that hole. But sideways consolidation after claiming a huge level like 7 is, you know, that's not a totally bad thing either. Now, if you're a bear, one thing's on your mind, and it's very simple here. Just reject 7. Just get back down below $700 a share and fade as hard as possible away from that. Ideally, you know, in a bearish perspective, opening up a downside test back to, a lot of bears are going to be looking back down to 630, because that's the only place to look really at this point. We've moved higher so quickly, we haven't had any time to develop new levels here. All right, let's take a look what the options traders are thinking today in terms of bias. So we have almost 1.35 million total contracts traded here today. 818,000 of those were calls. 529,000 of those were puts. Overall call put ratio is leaning bullish. All right. That short-term speculation, however, the 0 to 20 delta, we're seeing 241,000 calls, 276,000 puts, close to 277,000. So actually the short-term speculators are leaning slightly to the bearish side, but not quite as much as the overall call put ratio is leaning to the bullish side. All right, and of course, as expected, that mid to longer term delta ranges, the 61 to 80 and 81 to 100, are also leaning heavily bullish. Listen, before you head out, if you got value out of this video, please subscribe to the channel. It helps out tremendously. This is a brand new channel, and it really does help out a lot to continue to produce these videos on a daily basis. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.